Everybody gather near. The doctor's in the house, so lend him your ear. The things he can say might even make your day. He might even help your pain go away. The doctor is in the house.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the doctor is in the house. And we will talk about how we got in the house today at another podcast. But welcome, everybody, to Dr. Ron Unfiltered, Uncensored. I am Dr. Ron. I'm glad that you are joining us today. Before we dive into today's exciting topic with a great guest, I want to take a moment to wish all of you the graces and blessings of the recent holidays. Whether you celebrated Passover, Easter, or simply enjoy time with your loved ones. I hope this season brought you renewal, reflection, and peace. And we will get to the heart of today's episode, a topic that affects all of us no matter our age, exercise and longevity. We've heard all that movement is medicine. We've heard it, movement and medicine. But what kind of exercise actually helps? What kind actually helps us to live longer and better? How do strength, power, and hormonal balance play into the equation? Well, to answer that question, we have today, and I'm thrilled to welcome him, a truly remarkable guest, Dr. William Wong. Dr. Wong is a renowned classical naturopath, an exercise physiologist, an expert in enzymatic and anti-aging therapies. He has a deep understanding of the human body and its performance, and this really makes him the perfect person to guide us through the science and, more importantly, the common sense behind using exercise as a tool for vibrant, extended living. And does it do that? So we'll explore the pathways to physical vitality, but I need to remind all of us that true health is a harmony of our body. It's body, mind, and spirit. Just like a classical orchestra, everything has to be in tune. In our pursuit of strength and longevity, we must never neglect our spirit, the essence that fuels our purpose, our passion, and our connection to something greater. So whether you're walking, lifting, stretching, or just tuning into this podcast because you're curious, you're going to want to hear what Dr. Wong has to say. And I have one more thing to say, too, before we get our great guest on. We've been told, as I indicated, that exercise is essential for health and it is essential for a long, healthy life. But what if that's not entirely true? So today we will talk about a study out of Finland that might be turning this conventional wisdom on its head. And it's not a small study. These researchers studied the activity levels of 22,000 twins over a 30-year period. Now, we'll give you the bottom line of, I'll give it to you now. They found that while moderate exercise had a small benefit, those who exercised vigorously did not necessarily live longer. And you might say, well, that's new. Well, it isn't the first time that such findings have surfaced. National Geographic's research into centenarians decades ago found that many live long lives despite being couch potatoes. So what the heck's going on here? And then to put icing on the cake, Dr. Wong just came out with a new blog talking about sarcopenia. And, Dr. Wong not only is a PhD in physiology, he is a member of the World Sports Medicine Hall of Fame. So without further ado, Dr. Wong, welcome, sir, and thank you for hanging in there while we got our connectivity problems situated.
Thank you for having me on board, Doc.
No, you're always a pleasure. So now that we maybe can hook up, we'll do this more often.
Yeah.
So does exercise... Well, I guess maybe I was going to talk about exercise and longevity only, but then when I saw your blog about sarcopenia, it really fits into what I talked about last week and a podcast that has been really well accepted about seniors needing to have muscle strength in order to prevent falls, because falls are very dangerous to seniors and they lead to consequences like even dementia. So
Mm.
let's maybe let's take it in two parts. Do you think, in your experience, do people that exercise live longer?
No, actually, the work, the primary work on that was done back in the 1970s. And then it was confirmed again by other work done by Dr. Ken Cooper, the founder of the aerobics craze and marathoner. And the couch potatoes live just as long as the exercisers. The couch potatoes live longer than the marathoners. The marathoners all die from cardiac and vascular inflammation or internal organ ischemia. But there is no extension of life expectancy because you exercise. But this is a big but. Your quality of life is greatly improved if you exercise. So you can stand, walk, reach, a stoop. You can do all the ADLs, all the activities of daily living better if you're stronger.
And that makes perfect sense, especially tagging onto last week's podcast. So before we talk about glutathione and genetics that I want to bring up in biological aging, are there? Let's talk about the exercises that you would recommend for our seniors, our seniors approaching the 100-year mark from 80 to 100.
We need to look at the work of Dr. Philip Rash. Dr. Rash was a PhD exercise physiologist who headed the Naval Human Performance Laboratory way back when it was first founded in Quantico Base, Virginia. He formulated the Navy SEAL PFT, he formulated the Marine Corps PFT and physical fitness programs, but he basically said that you don't need to work every single joint. We need to work in compound joint movements. Take a look at a baby crawling across the floor. How is he ambulating? He's pushing with his lowers and pulling with his uppers. So 70% of the lower body pushes, 70% of the upper body pulls. If you work the major pulling movements and the major pushing movements, you've got 70% of the whole body, and then just add some ab and lower back work. And he said, you've got it done. And for 40 years, the Marine Corps followed his advice until they just lowered the standards recently to let gals through. But that's a whole nother subject.
Yeah.
So it worked, and it worked magnificently. We can apply the same thing. So instead of doing 20,000 exercises, the primary pulling exercise is like a chin-up. You can do it on a machine if you're not strong enough to do chin-ups as a front pull-down with your palms facing you, not palms away from you. Palms facing you, hands shoulder width apart. As soon as you turn your palms around to the pronated position when you grab the bar, you cut your biceps out of the action. They don't help to bend your elbow. Now, it used to be taught that you made it harder that way, so your lats had to work harder to get you up. No, it just meant that your forearm muscles, your elbow flexors failed before your lats got really saturated with work. So the first exercise for the upper body should be the front pull down or the chin up. For the lower extremity, squats, if you can do them, leg presses of any kind, straddle squats, which are also called Jefferson squats, which are really good for people with compromised lower backs. Any one of those will do it. So let's say you've got 2 or 3 sets of 5 to 8 reps. Now, here let's define things. When we're doing strength work, we're working on a spectrum. At one end of the spectrum are high weights and low reps. At the other end of the spectrum are very low weights and high reps. We want to work somewhere on the strength side instead of on the endurance side. So since we don't need a lot of muscular endurance to do the activities of daily living, but we do need the strength to pick up a cast iron frying pan or a pot of water. You don't get that by picking up a weight and moving your arm 20 times. You get that by picking up a heavier weight, sometimes a much heavier weight, and only moving it 3 times, only moving it 4 times, only moving it 5 times. If you take a look at the power lifters and the Olympic lifters, they do sets of between 1 to 5 repetitions. That's about it. And they're the strongest people on earth, much stronger than bodybuilders or anybody else. So if we apply those principles to how we exercise, we can do a whole workout in less than 45 minutes. Let's say you do leg presses, front pull downs, crunches, and prone hyperextensions, and bingo, you've got it all.
Now, would you quantify that in any respect for some of our listeners, like how many seconds in concentric or eccentric, or using the use of those muscles?
You should try to come down in a 2 count and go back in a 4. Breathing out as you pull down, or breathing out on the exertion part of the exercise, and breathing in on the release. So if you're applying the principles of time under load, then the slower you do your reps, the more time your muscles are under load, the stronger they're going to get.
That's perfect. I like that explanation. I sort of, in the late 60s, when I got out of the Army, I was exposed to some of that. And when you start, for my purposes, just to stay in some kind of shape, when you start exercising that way, it's exhausting.
Oh gosh, yeah. Yeah, and it's okay to only have 1 or 2 workouts a week, as long as you're taking yourself to that point where you're really tuckered out, where your muscles have really been worked, where, let's say, you almost fail at the last rep, you can't quite finish it. That's it. You're done for the week.
Yeah, our physiologist at Fort Sam Houston, he would say, if you're not getting nauseous at the end of your workout, you didn't strain enough.
Yeah, and that's anaerobic conditioning. The height of anaerobic conditioning is collegiate wrestling. College wrestling starts around the end of the football season. So we used to get a lot of football players coming in and starting up the exercise programs to begin wrestling season. And invariably, these guys who were very well conditioned to running 100 yards or running so many yards, they'd be by the edge of the mat vomiting up into buckets because they didn't have the anaerobic conditioning. They had the aerobic conditioning, but they didn't have the anaerobic conditioning. Now, I'll put it to you that anaerobic conditioning is more important than aerobic conditioning. It doesn't matter if you can run 25 miles, but let's say you're a cop and you just get out of a car and your suspect just runs away. You've got to do a burst of energy, a burst of run for a very short time to grab that guy, pull him down, and do whatever. That's not like running a mile or 26 miles. It's more like a very short wind sprint. That's anaerobic conditioning. There have been many cases documented where you've had people like cops or other folks who have to do that sudden fast movement to get out of the way of a car or to get out of a house on fire or whatever. And they were well-conditioned runners. They could run so many miles. They did it 4, 5, 6 times a week. But they plopped dead of heart attacks because what they were demanding of their body during the emergency was anaerobic conditioning, but what they had trained for was aerobic conditioning. And even, again, Dr. Cooper started figuring out by the early 2000s that wasn't what people needed. I wrote an article back in, I think, 04 or 05 called How to Avoid a Heart Attack by Doing Less Aerobic Exercise. I still have it up on my drwongsmessage.com website. And that article was read by a cardiologist named Sears. And he developed an entire program around it. And he's got a really nice clinic down in Florida where he does his own diet and then a variation of what I spoke of, doing interval work, anaerobic bouts of work, which also produce aerobic conditioning, but get you ready for any of the stresses you might have on your heart.
So, is it recommended to use a full range of motion or a partial range of motion for our seniors, especially? What do
There,
you recommend?
there are a couple of principles, but they're not hard and fast. For an 18 to however, let's say 50, 55-year-old, the rule we were all taught in one way or another, is that a muscle likes to be worked through its primary range of motion in as great a range of motion as you can possibly get. And that's fine until your joints become arthritic and it hurts to go through certain parts of the range of motion. So here we pick up some of the Russian research. The Russian Olympians were getting their shoulders blown out by doing full range of motion bench presses. In other words, when they were doing the bench press, when they were coming back down towards their chest, they brought their elbows below parallel with their torso. They did horizontal adduction.
Yes.
And so they were blowing out the long head of the bicipital tendon, which lies underneath the anterior deltoid. What the Russians did to compensate for that, when they discovered what the problem was, is that they had their athletes do bench presses from the floor where you can't go back as far. You can't get past the floor. So your arms are basically parallel with your torso, and then you push up. So under conventional theory, that only works part of the muscles, only works part of the fibers, and doesn't strengthen throughout the entire range of motion. But that theory was wrong. When the Russians tested for strength throughout the entire range of motion, they found that the partial range of motion exercises strengthened people as well as the full range of motion. So applying that to seniors, if you've got a really creaky knee, and I've got two really creaky knees, you know that the mid phase of a knee extension is going to hurt like crazy because that's when your kneecap rubs most against the joint. The very bottom of the knee extension, you're the weakest. So first you've got to set the weight to the weakest part of the body, and then you've got to work through the painful part to get to the end third of the range of motion where you're fairly strong. If we do an isotonic movement with an isometric hold at the end, and I'll describe it. You set the knee extension to only go the last 1/3 of the range of motion. And then you lift up, and while you're lifting, you hold it there for 10, 20 seconds. So you're holding that isometric contraction at the top of an isotonic movement. And I'm going to have a video on this within a few weeks. I've actually got to clean up and redo my gym so I can probably properly do it, because I've got too much stuff laying around being a pack rat. But
well, the same thing goes for a bicep curl. Maybe they can understand that more visually.
Well, think about sitting down in something like a power rack, and you've got a barbell with weights laying across your thighs. And now in this power rack, you've got a couple of stops or safety stops just about under your shoulder level. So all your range of motion is from your lap to just under the shoulders, and you curl up the weight and you press it up against the stops. So you're not only holding up the weight of the barbell, you're also forcing a greater contraction by pressing the barbell against the stops, and you count to 10 or 20, and then you slowly bring it down.
I'm sorry, Dr. Wong.
No, it's all right. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so this is isometric, which is range of motion, plus like what we heard 50, 60 years ago, standing in a doorway, so to speak, and just pushing up against the frame of the door, and you can't push anything. You're just pushing as hard as you can.
Right.
So there's a combination of both.
Yes. The basic isometric theory says that you try to achieve a maximal contraction by pressing against an immovable object. And that works okay especially in post-injury and neurological damage rehab. Works great for CVA patients. Works great for folks who've had severed nerves who are trying to rebuild, or torn muscles who are trying to rebuild their strength and range of motion. But for folks who are fairly mobile, it isn't enough resistance, and it isn't enough to really force that maximal contraction, which is why if you're sitting down doing that barbell curl the way I described, you're curling up the weight, then you're pushing it up against something that isn't going to allow the bar to come up anymore, and you're holding it all there for so many seconds. And that creates closer to a maximal contraction. And you could do 3 sets of 1 rep of that, and you do that once a week for 6 weeks, and by the time you get to the 6 weeks, you'll see your bicep growing, and you'll feel stronger, and you will be stronger throughout your activities of daily living. That cast iron frying pan is not going to be anywhere near as heavy anymore.
Right, and that will translate to your activities of daily living, your ADLs, and make you stronger. And that's what we need as we get older. As Dr. Wong said, even lifting up a jug of water to fill your cup, or whatever, just walking up and down steps without tripping, like our past demented president. Sorry about that.
Nothing can help him.
But he waited too long, and we don't want to do that. That's why we're giving you this information. And so let before we just get off of that. So we know the concept. Now, could you maybe enumerate, say, some upper body exercises and some lower body exercises?
Okay.
What would you do with your arms, your shoulders, your legs, and so forth?
If you're working, let's say the front pull down, let's say you've got no problem with your shoulders and you've got fairly good range of motion with the shoulders, then you're doing the front pull down, or if you're strong enough, you're doing the chin up. That gets all of your pulling muscles, your elbow bending muscles, and your shoulder extension muscles. So you're getting 70% of the upper body. The only thing left in the upper body are your pushing muscles, the triceps, the pectorals. And for that, you can do dips or assisted dips, or you can do bench presses or incline presses. If you don't have full range of motion at the shoulders, instead of front pull downs, you can do seated or bent over rowing, either on a seated rowing machine or using a dumbbell, doing one arm at a time while leaning on a bench and stabilizing yourself. So there are various exercises that can be applied depending on what is right or what is wrong with the particular joint in a senior.
Okay. And lower body?
Oh, leg presses. I don't expect seniors to do squats, although some of them can do the squat machine. Like, oh gosh, ProTech has a really good squat machine. I just, a few years ago, I gave my squat machine away to the sheriff's department. The leg press should be something that is considered because you're safe sitting, you're in a controlled position. If you get stuck somewhere, you pull up the stop and you stop the range of motion and you lock the chair in. So you really can't get into trouble with it. The less range of motion you've got at the knee, then the less deep you should go into the leg press. Even if you only do 1/3 of the squatting or 1/3 of the leg pressing motion, you're okay. If at the end of the rep, you tighten up the muscles that are involved, your backside, your thighs, and you count to 10. You're holding the resistance up, then you're tightening the muscles up, and then you continue with the set.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, just let me tell you that the latest blog is called Maintaining and Building Muscles despite severely worn and arthritic joints. I call that the Rice Krispies, the snap, crackle, and pop.
Yeah.
And you can find that. I may not enunciate this properly, but after Wong is an S and after Essentials is an S. Dr. Wong's Essentials.com. And you'll find that article, and you probably can sign up for his mailing list on that too to get get his future ones. So I mean that's part of it. We need to stay, even though study wise it was surprising that sedentary people had a lower mortality risk than people that exercised a lot. And the World Health Organization, which I don't have a lot of respect for, but they came up with 150 to 300 minutes of moderate exercise, 175 to 150 minutes of vigorous exercise a week did not necessarily prolong your life. And as Dr. Wong said, this is not new information. It started with the aerobics craze in the Air Force, Dr. Kenneth Cooper back in the 60s and 70s. Not new information. And National Geographic has had studies of centenarians for 30 years, and their studies also revealed that a significant number of them were not fitness enthusiasts. But what was the common factor? Well, one of the common factors was high levels of glutathione, a powerful antioxidant, and it's crucial for our livers and for detox. So this study may suggest that a well-functioning liver, not just physical activity, might be a major key to your longevity. And what is not in my notes is something that I learned from Dr. Hans Nieper a long time ago, that you can exercise so much, you cannot take enough antioxidants to counteract all the oxidation that takes place in your body. So maybe that's the high glutathione might help. So you might also argue that genetics could be a factor, but this study we talked about in the beginning of the podcast was by the study of twins, which allowed the researchers to rule out genetics. Some twin pairs had drastically different exercise habits, yet their longevity remained similar. And that would suggest that exercise alone is not a magic bullet. It is not a magic bullet. Another fascinating aspect is a role when we talk about lifestyle choices. Really important. No matter every new thing coming down the road, our lifestyle choices are super important. And the researchers noted that those who exercised less were more likely to smoke and drink excessively. How about that? It's just an observation. And I wanted to just mention about biological aging. Exercise still seems to have some impact on biological aging markers, but the effects follow a U-shaped curve. Too little or too much exercise has potential downsides. So it suggests that while movement is beneficial, there might be a sweet spot where exercise supports health without pushing the body into excessive stress. So older weightlifters, Dr. Wong might be one of them, who try to lift as much as they did in their youth, may increase their risk of, he mentioned it already, strokes.
Yes.
Right?
I know of two separate cases that have just happened within the last 5 or 6 years, where men who had been champion powerlifters, or one particular fellow was the U.S. team to the world's strongest man competition in 2010, they both got strokes from trying to do what they used to do.
Yep.
I've seen that over the last 40 years. Those have been the two most recent cases. And we like you said, we need to find that sweet spot. There was a fellow named Harold Poole who had won the Mr. America and the Mr. Universe back in the 1960s. And he just passed away a few years ago. He was still coaching and training folks, but his seniors would work out very differently from the younger folks.
And it makes sense. Those of us that are getting there, I'm in my mid-80s. I know I cannot do what I did before, and I don't even try.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I think you pointed out to me is runners, that they may be running toward, but not away from heart disease because of the chronic inflammation.
Yep.
I mean, and so we there's a sweet spot.
Yeah.
We have to find that.
Back in the 1999 New York Marathon, there were several runners who had renal failure, a few who got rhabdomyolysis, where their muscles started dissolving away from overwork, but they had four deaths from either MIs or total renal failure. So, running long distances, everyone forgot Greek history. Come on. If you're familiar with Greek history and the Battle of Marathon, when Philippides got to Athens to proclaim that they had won the battle, he plots dead. The worst thing that I've seen happen with marathoners, with women marathoners especially, is that their internal organs become ischemic. All the blood's going into their muscles. Not that much to the brain, not that much to the heart, almost none to the intestines. And in the middle of a race, they fall down, they're screaming, they're whatever. I know of one gal who had to have all of her reproductive organs removed because they became ischemic and they died while she was running. Other folks who've had sections of their intestines taken out because those sections became ischemic and died during that run. So endurance athletics is not something that you do if you want to preserve your joints and you want to preserve your innards.
It's all right. So here's my take. Should we stop exercising? And my answer, geez, I sound like you on your blog. My answer is absolutely not. Well, we talk about a direct link between exercise and longevity, and there's a question of if that exists. It does not discount the many other benefits of physical activity.
Exactly.
Right? And I'll give Dr. Wong the last say on this. Regular exercise improves heart health, muscle strength, mental well-being, and something you're going to hear more and more about, and I started talking about this a year ago with methylene blue, metabolic function. So my key takeaway for this audience is balance. Overtraining might induce stress that counteracts some of the benefits, while sedentary lifestyle has its own set of risks. Finding the right amount of movement without chronic overexertion might be the best strategy for long-term health. And Dr. Wong, what do you think?
Bingo, bingo, bingo. You hit it right on the head. I'd like to see a study where they compare both life expectancy and the abilities to do the activities of daily living amongst seniors who exercise and seniors who don't. But we can say in a nutshell that you might not live any longer from doing the mild exercise programs that we just spoke of, but you'll have a much easier time in life, and folks won't have to be wiping your ass or doing whatever else because you're unable to reach or you're unable to do it.
So, ladies and gentlemen, now I think you've heard it, and this is not the end all. You have to do your own research and more importantly, take action. Take action and find that balance. Find that balance. So walk more, do resistance training, which I know a lot of you don't like to go to the gym, but you don't have to be a gym rat. You don't have to stay there forever. Resistance training should be incorporated and incorporate activities that keep you strong and mobile, but without excessive strain. And one last thing, don't forget about internal health. There's more to come on glutathione levels and liver function as you exercise, and that may have something to do with your longevity. And Dr. Wong knows a lot about that field, and we'll talk more about that at a later podcast. So, Dr. Wong, we sort of agree that don't overexert yourself. Find that sweet spot. Put resistance training into the mix, and again, it's a balance of life. It's a balance. And go ahead. You wrap it up for
Let me
me.
add one more thing. When we look at sarcopenia, we're also looking at osteoporosis because according to Wolff's law, bone density is directly related to the muscles around it and the strength of the muscles around it. From 50 to 60, we lose 10% muscle mass a year until by the time we hit 60, you were basically bare bones minimum muscle mass to move yourself around if you're not working out. So since we know that we have that muscle loss, since we know that osteoporosis is directly related to muscle loss, isn't a gal out there with osteoporosis that's got good muscles. That just doesn't happen. So when we exercise, when we strength train, what was found, I forget which university did the study, but it was back in 98 and 99. Seniors will get 11 to 15% increase in bone density a year from strength training if they took just the drugs and the estrogen. Now think about this. Estrogen is catabolic to muscle. So it's almost like you're working against yourself when you're trying to fight osteoporosis with estrogen. But if you're using the exercise, the medications will give you 2 to 3% increase in bone density a year if you're lucky, which most of them don't work, and you don't get the side effects like your jaw dying off and your bottom teeth falling out, which happens with one of the anti-osteoporosis medicines, the one that Sally Field used to advertise. Then if you're building muscle, you're gaining a lot more bone mass and bone density than if you were just doing the drugs.
Well, I'm really so happy you brought that up. It was in my notes and it got buried. And one other thing that got buried, and I'll just not to keep this going on too long. I have my thoughts on Ozempic and Wegovy and all these other drugs. I don't believe that they work. I did a podcast on that. But if by any chance you survive them, you've not only lost fat, you've lost muscle. You've lost muscle mass. You must get to the gym and start resistance training.
Yep. And have you seen the faces that those drugs create? There's a thing now. There was a video about the celebrities who've been on those anti-diabetic weight loss drugs, and how their faces change. They look awful.
Yeah, there are some naturopathic physicians that have newsletters and all. They look horrible. They look like they just got out of a concentration camp.
That's because they're all vegans and vegetarians.
And it's horrible. So we need a quality of life. That's what we're going to strive for, and a nice balance. And I'm so happy Dr. Wong brought up the osteoporosis, because I do get questions about that. And here's the way. You don't have to take a drug that'll make your jaw fracture.
Yep.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you found this discussion interesting, please share it with your friends, and let's keep the conversation going. I think it's really important. And I want to again thank Dr. Wong, not only for being a great guest, and I consider him, ladies and gentlemen, as a dear friend, and I've never met him in person, but he's always there when I need a question answered. He generally 99% has the answer for me. So I want to thank him again. And now that we found a way to talk to you together, we
got all the gremlins.
Yeah, well, all the demons. We'll do this again. But Dr. Wong, thank you so much. And,
thank you. It's been an honor being on the air with you again.
God bless. I appreciate it. This was worth the trial.
Thank you. And to everyone, right. A happy Easter. Christ is risen.
Amen.
Amen.
All right. Let's see if we can have Freddie Cooper take us home.
Hey, everybody. Dr. Ron's finished for today. I hope you got some good wisdom for what the man had to say. If it's all about good health, he's the man you got to see. He has a lot more answers for you. So tune in next week when the doctor is in the house. Or when the doctor is in the house. Let the doctor know what's bothering you. When the doctor is in the house. doctor is in the house. Doctor is in the house. Let the doctor know what's bothering you. I'm sure he can tell you just what to do. The doctor is in the house. The doctor is in the house. Let the doctor know what's bothering you when the doctor is in the house.
Till next week, ladies and gentlemen. Bye.